talking about the problems, the new scientific problems with evolution. Well, it's not new. Not new at all. There's always been massive scientific problems with evolution. First and foremost, the most important, it's not scientific. It's philosophical. It's philosophical. Freedom goons. Yeah, I was always, obviously because of my ego, and I also do comics and cartoons, I do have this sense of disdain, maybe jealousy, maybe it's not fair, maybe it's entitlement, maybe that's what it is. With these types like Freedom Toon and some others where they get elevated, they get propped up, and they don't actually produce the best stuff. But is this new? I mean, look at pop culture. But somehow I'm still confused by it, and I take it personally a little bit. They use my stuff, they share my stuff, they've stolen my stuff, but then you're just like, well, we're not going to elevate that guy. It's like, do I have to change my name to Made by Jim Bergenstein? Is that what I need to do? You know what I mean? It's not fair. Having a moment. Having a bit of a moment here. All right. All right, so this guy is going to talk about the new scientific problems and a better paradigm. See, it's always the case where they look at all the problems of evolution, and instead of throwing it out and being like, this is obscene, they maintain their status in their academic field by holding to it, but just changing it a little bit.
Darwinism, unlike some of the other sciences, does not tell us a literally true story about what happened in the past. The evidence doesn't allow for that.
It seems that a few big ideas that are wrong have been embedded into the culture.
If life was a chemical event, it happened on the molar scale. That is 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd, because that's how chemical reactions run.
Enslaved by Truth says, so the dignity of human beings, no, rights aren't dignity. That's a mistake, dude. Dignity is granted by God, that we're made in God's image, but that has to do with our duties then, not what we're given. How could you say human dignity is tied to a set of things you think you deserve? That's not even dignified. That's pride. What are you talking about, Enslaved by Truth? No one said the dignity is granted by dudes. The dignity is acknowledged by dudes. But that's a deontological argument. That's a teleological argument. That's a Christian argument. The rights, the privileges you're given aren't based, that's not what gives you dignity. Oh, you're dignified. Here's a gun. You deserve a gun now. You're dignified. Well, no. Well, tell me one thing that's a right, that's allowed, that's identical to humans having dignity. What are you saying, dude? This is insane. Stillborn, remember what to do when debating a sophist. Tell them to go argue with themselves, which they are. Yeah, Stillborn, Stillborn and myself are trying to figure out some 2-on-2 partners for is nationalism compatible with Christianity or something like this. But he's got, who's the guy with the propeller hat? Soy pilled. And his proposed partner was Corinth, which I won't debate Corinth. Corinth is a waste of time. He's a sophist. Total waste of time. Just a nonsense machine. Insufferable. Good afternoon, JB. Thanks for all the great content. You're welcome. Thank you for the $10 tip. It was a pleasure teaming up on Freedom Tunes earlier. Oh, is that you? Yeah. Good job. Yeah, I just showed that. There's no response. You can't respond to it. It's like, it's over. Stephen says, it's simple. How can we how can we break the duty to not steal if people don't have the right to their property? Well, it's not even that. The duty, even if someone didn't have a property, like right, you can act against somebody. You know what I mean? You could say that property is an extension of the person. So you're acting against them. It's the person you're acting against. It's not the property. You can't act against property. So they have the possession of the property, you know. But then again, you could be justified in taking something from someone that's their property. So that it all comes down to this. If there is a Christian duty that requires the violation of said right or ownership of anything, then the duty supersedes the concept of a right. The right is this, it's a temporary allowance granted by men. And so if the group of men decide that you owning X, that the duty to take that from you supersedes the right, what's this right? I mean, it's obviously upheld and invented by men with guns. You know what I mean? There's no way around it. Mechanically, if you talk about it, there's no way around it. Mechanically, you can't get around this. Furthermore, Stephen Douglas, the right to own something as property is merely the ability to defend it with force. That's all it is. That's all that's happening when you own something. Oh, this is mine. Until it's not. Yeah, but it's mine. They just took it from me. It's still mine. No, it's not. They took it. Property. Amazing. Can you imagine meeting God, you know, when Christ comes back to judge the living and the dead, and you're like, but my stuff, but I have a right. I have a right to a fair trial, Christ, don't I? No, it's Wick TV, the same dude Andrew debated. Wick? Oh, man, he's, oof. I would debate him. I mean, if I debated him, that would be a very animated, to say the least, debate. I always ask this, show me one right, give me one right, quote, right, that's God-given that a man can't demonstrably take from you. Or property? No, they can take it from you. They can take it right from you. Austin Pissy, $5. Hey, Jim, here's my small contribution. Thank you. Every little bit helps. If you ever visit northern Utah, I have a good parish and a beer for you. I will take you up on that if I'm in northern Utah. Free will. Yeah, free will wouldn't be a right. Tain't nothing. That's one thing we have, regardless of people taking items from us. We have our own will. So then it gets to, well, that's interesting because free will is tied to deontology. Those two are tied. What are your duties given that you have will? And people can't actually take your will from you. People can kill you, but they don't take a thing called your will. They just end your temporal existence and facilitate the separation of your soul from your body. Bobby Love, $5. Jimbob, the closest parish is 2 hours away from me. I have an unreliable pickup. Any advice? Yeah, move. I know it sounds insane, but it's actually not. Move closer. That's what I would say, Bobby Love. Be unreasonable. Be unreasonable when it comes to you folding yourself into the body of Christ. Be unreasonable. Make unreasonable requests of yourself. That could be driving that long, or it could be moving closer. That's what I say.
Since we've descended below the level of
Steelborn, $10. Thank you so much. Brings us up to 11 of 50, y'all. Yeah, it's Wick TV in Corinth. Oh, no. You can't have two of them. Can't have two of them. Wick is fine. Even though Wick is insufferable, he can at least kind of play the game. Corinth cannot play the game. Corinth deserves never to be on any debate panels, if I had it my way. No debate panels, no debates for Corinth. He should be blackballed for how he acts and operates. Just like Synth. Corinth and Synth. They have a positive claim to defend. We can just attack their position if we want. I don't know, man. Corinth it's too much, dude. It's like a well-being issue. You know what I mean? It becomes like a mental well-being issue. It's so bad. It's so hard to deal with.
To Stephen Douglas, speed up, bud. We own nothing but rather are stewards of God's creations. It could be more righteous to take someone's property. Can we take an abused child from their parent? Can we take desecrated land from heretical tribes and build churches on it?
Yes. Consecration. Take it from them. Oh, you're taking their rights. Oh, I wouldn't do that. That violates the skinny sock people who have feathers in their hair. You put with the founding fathers. You have no right. Okay.
Of the cell into chemistry. Now we have Schwab's view saying that basically this: biological diversity is an initial condition that started at the origin of life. Biological diversity is not something that grows up in a tree. It starts out as a forest.
Yeah.
So, what's super interesting about that?
What's super interesting is that biodiversity is a phenomenon in nature that evolution has to account for mechanistically. This is the way you argue. Did I have a full debate? No, just little talking on Discord, just a little bit of back and forth on panel discussions is enough for me. It was like talking to Corinth is like having like a, I don't even know what it would be akin to. It's like a nightmare where you're swimming in someone else's blood. Stillborn $5. Yeah, but in my opinion, if they op is bad faith, it makes more fun because it's easier to win. It is easier to win, but you can't get anywhere because they're just constantly. I mean, two of those people. I don't know, man. I don't know. That just sounds so bad. Sounds like going to a party I would never, like you couldn't pay me to go to. That's what it sounds like.
There's actually a different way of approaching this that's more proximate to the way scientists derive beliefs from their data. But scientists don't study the nature of science or the nature of scientific paradigms. The philosophy of science, the history and philosophy of science.
General Woundwort says, a right to life means it can't be arbitrarily taken away. God was not acting arbitrarily, so he wasn't violating a right. Yeah, there's no right to life, by the way. There's a gift of life, and this is what the Enlightenment and the founders, they all subverted the language to get people to believe that they deserve anything. No, that's not even a Christian thing. You don't deserve anything. God can take your right or your life. Also, if someone kills you, did they take your life? End your life? Or did where's this right? Is there like a lingering little like ball of sparkles? You know what I mean? Like the person's dead and they're like, oh, where's his right to life? I guess the assailant took it with him. No? Life's over. Temporal life is over. So you don't have any, God didn't give you anything you're entitled to. God gave you nothing you're entitled to. God gave you something you're responsible for using.
Science studies scientific revolutions, scientific paradigms as paradigms, and then it's epistemology that really governs, I think, those principles in the philosophy of science. And so I'm trying to find a more proximate way of resolving the conflict between neo-Darwinism and intelligent design by building out a different philosophical framework based on an epistemological solution, not a metaphysical one.
See, I appreciate this guy's attempt, but the problem is he's still assuming evolution has any ground to stand on, that he needs to reinvent the paradigm to reconcile the two views. Dude, you don't need to do this. I know you're pressured, whoever you are, right? You're pressured in your field, you're pressured in your environment, you're pressured in your community, you know. Don't speak of the blasphemy that is evolution is bunk. Don't speak of it. So they're like, let me rearrange this to see if evolution can still work, and then I still have my job and I don't get ostracized. Let me see if I can just sort out this Rubik's Cube. It's like, no, it doesn't work. The whole thing should be thrown out, man. General Woundward, I think it's confusing the issue. Your rights can be infringed. Well, no, they can just not exist. There's nothing being infringed but an allowance given to you by a man. I don't understand. What's being infringed? There's nothing that can be infringed. Can't you just take the thing away that you think is being infringed and then it's not being infringed? It's like saying, like, the parent is infringing on my right as a child when they ground me. What? You don't have any rights as a child. They're literally taking away your allowance. That's all that's happening. You didn't have a right to it to begin with. It's like a kid. Imagine your own kid being like, but I have a right to be outside of my room. I have a right of free movement, Dad. You're like, no, you don't. You're infringing on my right. No, I'm just changing the law. I didn't infringe on anything called the right. You never had it. You had an allowance. I can't infringe on my own allowance I'm giving you. Yeah, but you're infringing on your own allowance you're giving me. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Joseph says that's a cop-out, JB. What's a cop-out? You got to use full sentences, okay? What's a cop-out? I'm literally describing exactly, mechanically, what you call rights. They're allowances. You're allowed to do X or not. That means there's either a consequence to doing this or not. Well, a consequence is given by men. Men declare the consequences. You either go to jail or not if you do this. Same thing with a father and a son. You have an allowance so far to walk around the house freely until you do something. Then you have to go to your room. There's nothing being violated. There's nothing being violated. It's literally the dude with the gun. That's all there is right there. I mean, when you don't debate the ought and just state how they are decided, no, the ought is given by duties, not by rights. That's the point, Joseph. When it comes down to it, there's people with guns. They're either secularists, Islamicists, Christians, or other, right? That's the truth of the matter. The only question is, what's their ethical system, and how do they use force? That's it. That's it. All there is. If you don't think that's what it is, just look at how, quote, rights are established by force, how they're defended by force, how they're changed by force, how they're eliminated by force. This isn't hard. Where is Yvonne to defend rights? Yvonne's got bigger problems to manage at this point. Gorilla Biscuits, do you think you can be prevented by society or people from fulfilling your duties? They could try, yeah. Yeah, you can, like, if you felt you had a duty to defend the location that is your nation, and its people. Eventually, with force, people can stifle, but your duty exists as long as you're alive, though, Gorilla Biscuits. So it's important to realize that your very attempt, even if it's futile, your attempt, look at the saints. Some of them got all of their, the members of their body, removed and sent to different locations. Up until the point we're no longer breathing in this temporal body, in this temporal place, we are attempting to fulfill our duties all the way up until we die here. So people can try to prevent it and obstruct you, but it never obstructs your will until you're dead. You know what I mean? It never, and there's always a Christian duty if you're alive that you can fulfill. There's always a Christian duty because of your will. Now, they could try to comatose everybody. Some weird experiment where they literally comatose every person who claims to be Christian. So they're not dead, but they're still alive, but they can't act on their will. That would be the one example where people could actually use force to make it physically impossible to act on your will. But the question is, do we have a duty to stop that from happening? Sure. That would be pretty sad if everyone who called themselves Christians were so weak that they allowed an opposition to lobotomize them. That would be the saddest group of Christians I've ever seen. Steelborn, $10. But this is such an easy W. There's no way to make an argument that Christian ethics are incompatible with nationalism. We can point to Rome, Byzantine. I'll tell you later today. I have to think about it. I really don't like conversing, debating, or even listening to Corinth. But it could be a total, it could be a total circus show. So who knows? I'll think about it. Rights exist. I have a right hand, right leg, even a right ear. Checkmate, bucko. For real.
Okay, so for
helpful.
It is. I want to kind of back up just a hair, just to lay a little bit of groundwork in case we just lost anybody. So if you can define for me basically what is Darwinism, how is it different than neo-Darwinism, how are both of those different from intelligent design in terms of paradigm, and then what is your paradigm when you're talking about, to go back to the title of your book, a post-Darwinian design theory?
Beyond origin. Interesting. What's up, Jerome? His name is Jerome. Arcoda, $5. Thank you. Quote, rights should only exist to allow one to freely do their duties. Yeah, it's an allowance. Yeah. But in that sense, the term rights become colloquial, they don't actually have them. For instance, you could take away someone's ability to freely do certain things in society. So for instance, when you jail someone for violating Christian ethical norms and laws, you do actually take away their ability to then participate in some duties that other people who are free to walk around can participate in. So you can actually limit people in their activities. But from a Christian view, this is what's interesting. Because we're not legalists, people's Christian duties it's not one size fits all. So, for instance, our gifts, God's gifts to us, different gifts, are lend to certain types of duties. So we're not called the same way. You could still fulfill a Christian duty that's peculiar to you and your talents and your skills and your energy that are not the same as other people's, and including people who are jailed. They can still fulfill on a Christian duty while they're jailed. So that's what's so cool and sort of bulletproof from a Christian ethical system, is that Christian ethics can be fulfilled in a multiplicity of circumstances that don't necessitate this modern conception of human rights. Steelborn, that's fair. I'm not trying to derail. I just want to laugh. In Corinth, yeah. It's one of those things I'll need a lot of beer for. So I'll think about it. Modern day wisdom got schooled by Alex O'Connor. These guys. This guy, yeah. Well, is that his name? You mean Daily Dose of Wisdom? I think modern day is someone else, Bjorn. Are you talking about this guy with the mustache? Yeah, he's not a great, he's not a good debater. He does like commentary. It's kind of like The View for heterodoxy. He's kind of like the Joy Behar of heterodoxy.
Maybe just kind of like
Sure.
in a basic manner defining like what are we talking about here in terms of paradigms?
Okay, so yeah, this is good. And then maybe we'll throw in the distinction between like intelligent design and creationism. That would be, I think that might help flesh out those categories. So Darwinism, the original project, Darwin's Origin of Species, 1859, I think. So this is why the title is of my book is Beyond Origin. So so Darwin starts. Oh gosh, I got myself in trouble by doing a much more elaborated view of this. Okay, shortcut. Darwin writes Origin of Species as a scientific paradigm shift from William Paley's natural theology. William Paley, a relatively immutable species in a local environment.
General Woundward asks, in the Christian ethic, can duties and rights work in harmony? If you're in a Christian system, a Christian ethical system, a society that's completely rooted in Christian ethics, the thing you call rights, you actually don't need the distinction. Because rights are just an allowance of what you can and can't do. So you don't even need the term. You just have a system where you go, no, that's not allowed. That's not illegal. You don't walk around going like, I have the right to do something. You don't have that from a Christian perspective. You don't walk around claiming what you deserve ever. So it's like a distinction without a meaning at that point. If rights is just referring to a set of behaviors you're allowed to do from the government, I mean, there's no distinction, a right or a not right. It's not singular. It's like, oh, I have this one right. Oh, I'm going to hold on to this one right. Why? Because there could be a circumstance that the said rights are violated for the better of the Christian society that you're in. So suddenly free movement could be violated. Is that a right? You know what I mean? What if you have to take up arms? What if you're, quote, drafted in a sense to defend your nation? Do you have are you going to go, well, no, it's my right, my rights. I have a right to not do this or something like this. Well, who determines that other than the dude pointing a gun at you?
Environment in the recent past, right? So Darwin, relatively mutable species in transient environments over geologic time, right? So Darwin's idea, he really borrows from the geologist Charles Lyell from the 1830s, and he says, the idea of catastrophism versus gradualism. So that
yeah, rights are a psyop. I remember Not So Erudite claiming rights are abstract. Yeah, she went Platonic and like they're out there, and it's like, no, they're not. Of course, a lady would say that. She, so a man stops her from aborting her baby, and she's like, but what about the abstract object floating above my head?
That small incremental changes over long periods of time can lead up to large changes. So think of a river running through a valley.
Changes lead to changes. Wow, top tier philosophy from the evolution proponents.
300 million years creates.
What causes the changes then? What we see today? Well, actually, that's a good question, Jimbob. Are you a science denier? Because here's the thing. We observe changes today in the world with animals and groups of animals. A lot of biodiversity. And what causes that, hold on, this is going to blow your mind. What causes the changes that we see today are changes that we don't see. And so, scientifically, the theory is changes cause changes. We got this, you guys. We got this.
It's a canyon.
Therefore, I'm a fish.
Right? The canyon doesn't have to have been created by, say, Noah's flood or some catastrophic event. The large change that we see can be incremental over time. So Darwin borrows that idea from geology and says, I've noticed that species are not as immutable as William Paley says, because pigeon breeding and cows and sheep, we know that we can select, we can artificially select.
Yeah, you can engineer, bro. You can engineer different animals. It's wild. It still doesn't mean naturally animals become other animals. You know what I mean? It's just never the case. I'm trying to get this up on my other. Let me see if this is it. There we go.
Traits, think of dog breeders, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he goes, well, what if there was a kind of natural selection and it was the kind of slow incremental change that nature did on species over long periods of time? One thing could transmute into another.
What?
Right. So that's the sort of orthodox original Darwinism.
Why do we have to grant the incremental process of geology? I don't know. I don't know why.
And then in the 1940s, you have the discovery of genetics. So the gene.
Kokoshuko, well put. He says rights only exists permissions of behaviors, as long as someone thinks it's their duty to uphold them. Yeah, duty is the only thing that's really being assumed here. When I debated Not So Erudite on whatever, I simply asked, whatever conception you have of rights, doesn't it entail that you have a duty to defend those things? And she said yes. From her view, what justifies the duties to defend feminism? What duties does feminism have? Zero.
Not the cell, but now the gene is Mendelian genetics.
Straight out of In's mouth. What if evolution is a consequence of the fall? No, that doesn't follow, because if man evolved from something that wasn't a man and the fall was introduced, death was introduced by man, that's a contradiction. So no, that doesn't follow. God created man in his image, and because he's created in his image, he has the ability to act on his will. And because he has given that he has the ability to act on his will, he was able to choose. And through man, sin and death came into the world. If evolution was a consequence of the fall, right, then how do you have a man achieve? This is like a Mormon view. Like you achieve, instead of humanity is, or a divinity is humanity realized, a view that evolution is a consequence of the fall would mean that humanity is animal realized. It's like a realization, like you had to evolve. But that doesn't make sense, because if it's a consequence of the fall, why would the fall produce an elevated progress toward humanity from beast? That doesn't even follow. Like, if evolution is this gradual, purposeful achievement toward higher thinking, reasoning faculties, everything that humans can do, art, architecture, philosophy, that means our image bearer status wasn't actually created when God created Adam. That our image bearer status somehow percolates epiphenomenally, naturalistically. that there's a naturalistic progress toward image bearer status in all of our capabilities. So no, it doesn't. That still doesn't work. Column Rock, $5. It's worse. They are claiming that evolution has no cause. It's just a happy accidents. Hopefully the organism, yeah, and maybe some of them will develop like insane levels of reasoning. I thought about this the other day, like yesterday actually. I was looking at human beings, and I was like, you know, there's deformed human beings, of course, and just ugly human beings who are not symmetrical, but they're still made in God's image. We still universally have a shape and a form and a function. And I was looking at like our eyes and our nose and our mouth and looking at our bodies and how everything about our bodies is proper to our nature and our status of being made in God's image. Our bodies are actually conducive to fulfilling the Christian path, to participating in the sacraments, to worship, to create lowercase creativity, to speaking, to debating, to singing, to chanting, to making, to everything conducive. And I was thinking about looking at humans from an evolutionary view and how we have eyes in this very specific spot, and that we don't ever develop in this long line of descent and splintering and breaking off, that we don't have humans that exist today that don't have the reasoning faculties. We don't have humans today that have their eyes, they just branched off where the eyes were just slightly off, you know? There's a minor branch, you know, because the eyes had to get to this place, right? So if the eyes had to get to this place from not this place, there must be a whole slew of animals that are our ancestors where the eyes or the place of a given item was in a different spot, gradually, finalizing itself temporarily as humanity holds them in this position, eyes facing forward, emotive forward. You know, that our personhood, the view of personhood happens to fit perfectly with a face that emotes and emotes forward facing, that all of it's captured in our face, that the soul, that the eye is the window to the soul, so to speak. But that could have, from an evolutionary view, it could have been that there was just, you know, the eyes were over here by the ear. Like, you don't get this. You don't get this scenario. But there's no reason why you wouldn't have that scenario if evolution was true. It just so happens to be that the evolutionary process produced the best form of humanity, leaving all other versions out. Yeah, but Jimbob, there may have been a human type of thing that had the eyeballs on the side and everything's in the different place, but it wasn't conducive to survival. Well, yeah, you're just assuming that. Why is it conducive to survival? $5, Steelborn. Jimbob, do you believe the Ice Age happened? Also, do you believe mammoth existed, and how do we account for it without granting evolution? A mammoth? I think giant elephants existed and hairier elephants probably existed. But the Ice Age, I'm not sure, actually, what that's ultimately referring to, other than, isn't it just saying, like, the Ice Age is granting yourself a very, very, very old existence of the Earth, Steelborn. I don't grant a very, very, very old existence of anything. You know what I mean? I don't grant anything time-based, you know, because the entire narrative of a deep development of the age of the Earth, deep development of the cosmos, it's all just a narrative. It's just as wild as they think our creation myth. So I don't know why we grant them any of it. You know what I mean? Why grant any of it? Mammoths are not any bigger than current elephants. Yeah. So if it's the case that if you stick an elephant in the like a cow, by the way, if you put an elephant in a cold environment, I wonder if it's already pre-coded to respond by thickening its hair. That wouldn't be an evolutionary argument anyway.
And so we find gene expression and gene mutations. And we go, okay, because in Darwin's original Origin of Species, he talks about variations within a kind. So some change happens. Well, now the neo-Darwinist says that variation is what we now know as a genetic mutation. So
No. That's actually not what we know. They notice how they never track this stuff. They look at genes and there's differences in genes, and then they assume that there was a mutation that was random that produced the difference in the anatomy, or the behavior, but they can never tell you. Give me an instance where you actually tracked from a trait, from an appendage, from a behavior, you actually were able to track it back to a single isolated mutation. They're like, what do you mean? We now know. I thought I said we now know. Nah.
there's a mutation.
Jimbob, what's going on in Nashville for you? Modern day debate, in-person debate. Got 2 of them. Got to fund myself. Speaking of funding, it's a good time to show your support, not just to the channel, but to my future career. We're at 22 of 50. A decent start today. But now would be a good time to show your support. We now know. I should have we now know merch. We now know. And now we know. And now I know my ABCs. Next time, won't you evolve with me? That's right, kids. You were a fish. And then a lizard. And then a hunched over gorilla butt. Our code of $5. Could one say the fall corrupted time? I've heard that theory before. If death corrupted creation, including time, it could logically follow that its false past exists. I don't think that's a contradiction, Arakoda. In other words, in layman's terms, the Earth could very well occur as very old. All of its material can occur as very old. So maybe, I don't know if we have to go that far, but it's an interesting counter to the naturalists' examination of what they believe is dating. But the thing is, Arakoda, I don't think we need to go there because the dating method itself has enough holes in it where they spurg out if you simply ask, how did you determine for any one of these methodologies the margin of error? And it's always another method that they're appealing to. So circular margin of error. Endless margin of error regress. Plus, it gives a good reason why the deep empirical past is so incoherent. It really is incoherent. Steelborn, $5. So could we test this idea of elephants being mammoths by putting a herd in Alaska? Not necessarily. I don't know if people would accept that, but you would just, at least you could demonstrate elephants. If you could demonstrate at least an inductive reasoning that if you introduce cold to elephants, that they already have it in their body, in their DNA, if it's the case, if their fur thickens up. If that's the case, the question is, okay, well, if similar creatures existed in a different place, they had the capacity to exist in that place, but it's not from a random mutation. Because that's really what's underpinning the evolutionary model, is that this assumption that random mutation, something that's totally accidental and unguided, produces highly specific functional traits and mechanisms inside the body. Not only that, but random mutation would actually have to account for the splitting from asexual or in-house sex to outhouse sex. Sounds disgusting. Sex in an outhouse. Outsourced out there in the world. Now suddenly there's a reality which goes against all notions of conservation of energy and risk assessment. Let's just split off the sex process and have the male go out risking its life to develop pretty feathers and all these other dance methods that might attract a female, perhaps, if it survives long enough, and also attracts a male to fight it. So you introduce this, and you're like, why would we do that? Why would that happen? Well, it just accidentally happened. And then they accidentally developed a penis that started as a nub. You know, as a nubby for however million years. And then the woman, the female, developed a dimple that would eventually be a vagina, even though it's completely undirected and unrelated to the penis. And separately, they're still able to be the product of sexual selection. They're product of sex that's not actually sex the way we know it. And then eventually they develop a full vagina and a full penis that happen to go together, right? They just happen to go together. And then they would say, well, no, there was a small penis first that was, you know, the nub that grew out from the seminal fluid pouch or whatever that was also accidentally developed. Even sperm itself would have to accidentally develop from not sperm if evolution was true. They have all these stages, you know, that you need to meticulously go through from a biological perspective that they can't take you through. They're like, what? Wait, what? Oh, yeah, you're right. All of these things have to develop through random mutation. And I have no reason to believe they would. And then they're like, well, no, there was a little nubby, Jimbob, that rubbed the dimple nubby. So there's a female dimple nubby and a male nubby. And they just kept rubbing it, and it started working. And for no reason at all, it started developing. It felt good to do it. You're like, what? Because they did it, it started feeling really good to do. I always ask them this. Why does an orgasm feel the way it does? Well, because it aids to the procreation. It rewards procreation. I'm like, do I need to eat? They're like, yeah. So by that reasoning, shouldn't I experience an orgasm every time I eat because we develop the need to eat for survival? Well, yeah, I mean, kind of. I mean, yeah, I guess that's a good point. Okay, isn't giving birth necessary for survival? Yeah. Why is it the woman is feeling so much pain from an evolutionary perspective then? Why do they feel so much pain during birth? Oh, because... I don't know, Jimbob. You tell me. You tell me.
In the way a gene is expressed, some of those expressions are going to be beneficial for the species, and that benefit is going to cause that particular variation in the species to become dominant, and then that's going to change over time. So that's
even the term like this, dude, why are you granting so much?
That's the Darwinism, and then the neo-Darwinism is the addition of genetic mutation as the natural selection acting on mutation as sort of the mechanism by which this change happens over geologic time.
So would you say, just to tackle those first two, is it basically a deepening of understanding of the mechanism within the same paradigm in the shift from... Okay, got it. So there's no sense of that Darwinism was wrong and now we're shifting the paradigm into a different direction. It's just, now we know more about this same concept.
Exactly.
Exactly. I just so you don't cancel me. I want to be very clear to my constituents and my followers and my patrons and my employees. I want you to all know I still think we evolved. I'm just offering a different, okay? Just don't cancel me.
And this is if we get to it, this will be helpful in the future because this is how young paradigms start. They start with mechanisms that the function of which is perhaps unclear. We can
No, the paradigms start with a philosophy of the past and the present and the future. And so did Darwinism. Okay? Darwin looked at some things that now we know is equivalent to a differentiation between bird beaks or some sort of adaptation between things like claws and shapes of birds and whatnot. They're still birds. We already know if you throw some animals in certain environments, over time they'll adapt to the environment, but that assumes that it's already built to do that. It doesn't randomly mutate and then it grows bigger claws. It doesn't randomly mutate. There's not a random mutation that then the finch is like, I'm so glad I got a random mutation that happens to be randomly compatible with the tree that I'm hitting or whatever it is, I'm with the type of worm I'm hunting. And so, I'm so glad for the random mutation. No. What he observed is animals, organisms, groups of organisms having the already existing capacity to adapt in real time, short amount of time, to the environment that it's in. That's it. That means it's already in the system. It's not a random mutation doing this. They always conflate these things. I don't know. It's like a magic trick.
And see that there's a function there, but we don't exactly know how it works, which is how Darwin starts. And then it's 80 years later that Mendelian genetics gives us the language and function of the thing that is being acted upon, right?
No, dude. No. There's no evidence that a single tract mutation that occurred that you observed produces within finches the ability to adapt to what they're doing. Not a single shred of evidence for that. So they started with observing adaptation to the environment. And now, not until genetics were discovered did they actually come up with an unjustified cause of it, So now we have that. No, we don't. We don't have that.
In natural selection. So there's nothing untoward about that. That's fairly common in the history of the sciences. So yes, the modern synthesis
I'm going to fight this guy.
Is when neo-Darwinism starts. So it's synthesizing, it's bringing together this view of natural history with this new
unbelievable nonsense. What is he, a lawyer too? He sounds like a lawyer. Object Fool, $20. Tag and learning epistemology has really sharpened my critical thinking. It's crazy to listen to them talk and know they think that they're being rational. Yeah, I know. It's true. Once you understand Tag for what it is and learning epistemology, Object Fool, you can't unsee or unhear the smuggled assumptions when people talk. That's what it really is. It's not just that they're being irrational. It's that you're picking up on a bunch of assumptions that are massive in their speaking, and they never thought that maybe the starting assumption that they're using is not justified. They just can't conceive of it. They just can't conceive that that could be true. It's almost like the conception of if we never went to the moon. It's a very similar, by the way. There are people that can't conceive that we never went to the moon because, from their view, what that would mean is that human beings at a massive level can be fooled about particular events. They just can't fathom it. It's like they think in their head that's impossible to fake people out on that. It's impossible. And yet the irony is that a lot of the people, not all of them, but there's definitely free-range conservative boomers who love the moon landing. But it's a good example because the counter you get from like the empiricists, the secularists who are obsessed with NASA and all of this stuff, they'll say in one moment, they'll say it's impossible to convince all of these people of something if it's false. And then you go, isn't that what you think Christianity is? By your own reasoning, Christianity itself is astronomically bigger of a conspiracy theory, much bigger of a deception at a world level, impacts way more people across time than the moon landing. And you're saying the moon landing can't be faked because it's too hard to lie to that many people. And yet Christianity existing is the example you use ultimately in a debate to demonstrate how easily it is to fool people. There's also Amphialus hypothesis, in which the deep past was never actualized, but it was merely a potential in the universe's nature, and thus the friction between actual events and natural potential events. That sounds like a Black Mirror episode.
This new science of genetics, and it's saying
Got
that the genetics element explains what we've been thinking in terms of evolutionary biology. So, intelligent design, really the most recent sort of grandfather of intelligent design was, I think, Philip Johnson in his Darwin on Trial. It's Darwin. I mean, there are thinkers before that. Michael Denton writes Evolution of Theory in Crisis in '85. I think Dr. Norman Geisler and Kirby Anderson write Origin Science in like 1988, which is trying to get at the nature of what this paradigm is. But really in 90.
Do I think it's possible for humans to go to the moon? No. I don't think it's possible to go to the moon. It looks like it is. Like, you look at the moon, you're like, oh, it's like I can make out that it's an object, and it has contours and it has texture, and it's to me, inductively, it's an object. Because some people take it like, oh, it's plasma, you can't land, like, oh, this. I don't take that view. To me, I've had a really good zoom camera. I was like, that's an object. That's dealing with light in the way that I know other objects, at least, deal with light. But going there, no. If it's the case that they went there that many times from 69 to 73, there's a couple of options here to take. One is they know quite well how to go there. They just don't televise it anymore. They just figured out that maybe that shouldn't be something we should show the world anymore. Instead, we should covertly examine it and do covert missions. Why? Because we don't want everyone having the capacity to figure out how we do this, given that you can hold the moon hostage, being that from the current paradigm, it's a necessary component of our existence. So, I mean, I think that too is possible. That you have to defend and protect who can go to the moon and not go to the moon. So you don't want to make it some sort of like public, multi-level public endeavor that includes the private sector. There's a decent reason why I can think of, to play devil's advocate to my own view. I can think of a variety of reasons why you would want to minimize the talk and the demonstrating the capabilities of even going there to the rest of the world. It's certainly a great vantage point to observe the rest of the system. Like, that makes total sense. To me, if technology moves the way I see it moves, then not only we should be able to go to the moon at the private level at this point, but there's no reason why the private sector or even the government wouldn't have a full-on streaming system that you can pay to access. 100 cameras on the moon facing in different directions. It's a great fundraising technique, by the way. People paying a membership. It's like OnlyFans, but it's the moon. They don't have it. There's no reason why you don't have that. It's insane. Even another country could have that. They don't have it. But we're told they keep going back without a man, and they land these things and do all this stuff, and you're like, where's the cameras, bro? How is it not one of the most effective ways to study the system we're in from a different view? Maybe there's some phenomenon you don't see from our view where we are. Maybe you can see it from the moon's vantage point. It's silly.
92, 91, 92, Philip Johnson writes Darwin on Trial, and then he brings together people like William Densky and Stephen Meyer.
What about the moon rocks they brought back? Well, enough of them have been demonstrated to be not that. So that's them just saying it's moon rocks. How do I verify that? It's always they, the people telling you they went, never other people. You know, how do you verify a moon rock? Just listen to them? You just listen. This was from the moon. Really? How do you know? Oh, you're a denier now? No, I'm just trying to figure out how do you distinguish moon rock from not moon rock. Just a verification method.
Meyer and Michael Behe. So in the 90s, those guys really start the intelligent design movement. And intelligent design is committed to the idea that there are features of the world whose best explanation is.
I remember seeing the rocket engine they used for the moon launch as a kid and being very unimpressed. Yeah, even Werner von Braun's V rocket, right? You could look this up. I'll try to find it on off time, but leading up to 1969, I think it was about 66, 67, where it had been documented that the limits of the V rocket at that point was something like 55 miles up. That was the limit, reaching like 65, 66. That's why internally there were people who worked for NASA who started questioning, look, why are we keeping this promise? This engineering is not looking promising. And they were sort of pushed out or ostracized. One of them even died, coincidentally, in a fire. And you look at that and you go, that's interesting. So the development from 1966, 67-ish, that the limitations of the Saturn V were between, I'll even grant 100 miles. It doesn't matter. I think what I remember is 55 miles specifically. But think about that. If the limitation is 55 or even 100 or even 250 miles up, if that was the limitation at 67, do you know what has to happen between 67 and 69 for them to do their little bit that they did on the world from the TV? The moon is 238,000 miles away. The limitation of even 250 miles from the Saturn V to 238,000 in 2 years, 3 years, what gives? What is it?
Intelligence rather than sort of mindless matter in motion, which would be a materialism.
Don't they have telescopes in orbit? Yeah, we just reviewed one yesterday. Yep. How do you focus a telescope in orbit that's like eternally spinning and rotating because it has no resistance? It's just this like a telescope in orbit is insane because like the kind of stillness and frame of reference you need to use a telescope, if it's always changing, right? It's constantly changing, and even the vector it's facing has this slight movement, and you would have to keep boosters which aren't pushing against air or anything, but using mass to change the direction, just the exhaustive mass altering the spin and the thrust of a given item in space. Like everything we know about a telescope has to be stationary, still, focused, highly tuned, not messed with at all, not exposure to any elements, no fluctuation, massive fluctuation of heat and all these things. JB, a satellite denier? I'm not a satellite denier. I know for a fact that a huge percent of what we call satellites, the machine itself is real, but a large portion of what you call a satellite, EPEX, is actually a balloon. There's a whole program. And actually, the start of the entire paradigm of satellites started from the science fiction works of Robert Heinlein, very popular, good friend of the Satanist Jack Parsons. But further, that the the initiation of said satellite and what it does is balloon based. That's why NASA still to this day is one of the top, if not the top, consumers of helium. So those are real. They fall. They're satellites, what they call satelloons, they fall. So the question isn't whether or not a satellite exists, because you can describe it in different ways. The question is a telescope that's floating in space that needs thrusters to get to different places, how it maintains a stationary frame of reference in order to take what you would call a high-end photograph, to import data from the external world from a given point such that it can be reconstructed. I mean, this is insane. Oh, it just does it. Didn't you see the documentary? No, I don't see how that's possible. So what? I'm incredulous. Big deal. Deal with it. Give me a beer.
And so you can see from the outset that the aim of the project, the movement, was to unseat materialism as the dominant metaphysics for the natural sciences. And one of the things about metaphysics is, and Joseph Owens will call metaphysics a habit. Again, dropping names here. Back in 2017, I was able to share the stage with J.P. Moreland and Jay Richards, and we were just doing a panel discussion about Christianity and the sciences.
Metaphysics is a habit?
The question came up about whether science was inherently in conflict with Christianity. Mm-hmm. And my response was, no. There are some places in Scripture where he talks about...
Oh, gosh, here we go. This is a bad move. This is why Presup and Tag are so important. You guys hear this? He's like, oh, the question of science and Christianity being incompatible. Oh, no, I need to go to Scripture and interpret how science is compatible. No, dude, this is what the philosophy of science is for. You can't have science without the whole slew of metaphysical assumptions, faculties, mind, reasoning, logic, information, meaning. The external world as a metaphysical concept, you as a metaphysical concept, time. There is a whole slew of things that need to be the case to do science, and the justification for those things can't be science. So if science itself, if you want to run the tag argument, if you want to swap knowledge with the scientific method, that would assume knowledge and all of these things anyway. You could run it that way. There's a necessary set of preconditions for science, okay? Just like knowledge being possible. List the preconditions. List them. List the preconditions for science to be possible as a method for anything. You'll notice that materialism, naturalism, science can't produce a justification for those things. It has to assume those things. Christianity specifically can give an account, a justification for the preconditions for science, just the same way from the tag argument. Preconditions for knowledge. Science can't do that. So asking the question, is science compatible with Christianity? No, you should ask a different question. Is science compatible with a worldview that can't justify reasoning and meaning and logic and mind? No, it's not. It's not. Science is incompatible with a lot of entailments of an atheist view, if not all. Well, Jimbob, I have to grant myself a supernatural thing called the mind and information and induction and reasoning, and I have to, or else I can't do science. Right? Okay. That's like me going, how do you justify the hammer? And they're like, but I can't build the house without the hammer. That's what justifies the hammer, Jimbob. No. You grant in yourself the hammer and its usefulness. I ask for a justification. Well, that is the justification. Where did the hammer come from? I don't need to tell you that. I use it to build things, Jimbob. I'm using it. So it's justified because I'm using it. So you don't need to tell me what accounts for the hammer? No, I don't. You ever going to debate on TikTok? Maybe. sometimes I'll head over there. It's Christological, but TikTok is actually the lobby of hell, and it actually lowers everything I think is good and right about anything, including myself, is somehow released into the atmosphere, and I'm emptied, but not in a good way. I feel dead when I go on TikTok. I feel nihilistic. I feel wrathful. I want to hunt people suddenly when I'm on TikTok. I want to start a hunting group that hunts humans in the woods when I'm on TikTok.
About the origin of the universe or the origin of man, where you could get some conflict between the way you read scripture and the way the sciences are read. But what's really at issue here is that when a person gets into the natural sciences and is trained in that mode, they're trained to think naturalistically, right? And so they develop a habit of naturalism as a metaphysics. Now, and that is...
And naturalism there is no naturalism as a metaphysics, by the way. There's no there is no metaphysics in naturalism. That you can't have it. You have to assume it, but it's not. You can't tie it to naturalism. It's impossible. Which is great for me because the debate with Peterson on Modern Day Debate does naturalism give a better account of reality than Christianity? And I'm not going to tell you my move, but you guys all kind of know the move, right? There's something right in the there's something right in the prompt. Right in the prompt, there's something that I can go after. Now, the Nicene Creed. I believe in one heliocentric Spinozian deity, and that we went to the moon, and that in one scientific space agency, I believe we will traverse space and achieve immortality through AI. Pretty much, dude. Pretty much.
Is obviously directly in conflict with a theistic view. So intelligent design really grew up. Philip Johnson, who's trained in law, right? His background
he accepted the prompt. Yeah, and it's theism too, Chill Oats. It's not even Christianity. It's theism, which normally I don't take a debate where I'm actually the one representing, quote, theism, because I think theism itself is trash, general. But you can take on a view for a debate and still refute and challenge the other view, even from a nebulous theistic view. You can still do it.
He's a professor of law.
Because all you really need in that case is to get a general definition of God as a necessary being or mind. That's all you need. That's why the argument that I use for truth necessitating God isn't the best argument for Christianity directly. It requires subsequent arguments to bridge to specifically the triune God, specifically the Orthodox conception of the triune God. But you can bridge to these things, right? And I do quite a good job. I'm pretty effective with these atheists, getting them cornered with truth itself. It's a pretty good trap for that. Not a single one got out of, by the way, if you guys know my track record with these types.
And one of the things that philosophers and lawyers sort of have in common is an interest in language and logic.
Yeah, generic theism is unjustified. But the question of whether a generic theism can better account for reality than naturalism, you could still win that.
Right. So what does the term mean? I mean, anybody who's read a contract is interested in what does this term mean? What is its extension and intention?
How do you bridge it? You can't. You need a personal God. You can't bridge it. So, Tuka Troopa. Holy cow! That is a big super chat! Go get a drink in Tennessee. Is that close enough? I mean, you're close enough. We're going to be pretty much in one location, I think, for the most of the time. And I also I'm not getting like a rent-a-car or anything, so I'm going to be staying put. But Tuka Troopa, thank you for that. I will use that funding to get multiple drinks maybe in Nashville. Oh, sorry. I don't know why I just thought in my head Tennessee was a city. My bad. I was like, wait, are you in a different place? Yes, thank you. I was also confused by the amount, which is very generous. I was like, that's an expensive drink. I thought you were telling me to like go somewhere. I was like, no, I can't. Sorry. I need my second coffee. Nashville is in Tennessee. I know. Yeah. Okay, let me play it, all right? Let me just play it, okay? For you guys. Here we go. Brain fart. What are the 3 branches of government? No idea. That's what makes me unique, you guys. The types of brain farts I actually have. And look, for the error, I get rewarded. Look at this. This is why you guys love me. It's not because I'm smart or I have a giant head and thin shoulders. Holy cow! It's because I'm just... It's because I'm just like you guys. I'm dumb. Thank you so much, Tuka. I will get 2 now. 2 expensive Japanese... what is it they do? Did they do scotch or whiskey? Japanese whiskey. Thank you. I will get 2 Japanese whiskeys with your money. Thinking of Nashville, Florida. Yeah, my brain's fried.
And then what is the logic of the...
It's all from this holding my breath for so long. By the way, we got trounced. Both David Patrick Harry and I both got completely wrecked by JL Adventures or whatever his name is. Buy yourself some lamb chops. I love New Orleans. I like them seafood out in New Orleans.
Of the argument. So Philip John...
Japanese whiskey stinks. Does it? I don't know. I had a good one once. I was like, okay. But who am I? I'm not a connoisseur. I wouldn't even know a good anything. You know what I mean? I wouldn't know a good anything.
Johnson really starts...
JS Urban Adventures. Yeah, he beat us all. Minute and 5, minute and 6 even.
On that hand, sort of trying to...
You're not going to drink Tennessee whiskey? Is that a real thing or is it just a song? Tennessee smooth, Tennessee whiskey.
He's out the rhetoric that surrounds the discussion about Darwinism in the culture. And then Mike...
By the way, that brings me to 31 of 50. Let's keep that goal going. Let's reach the goal. Reaching my daily goals. I have it laid out to reach this big goal on the screen you see. I will add the Vagine chats daily.
Michael B., he's Darwin's black box. It's a biochemical challenge to the mechanisms involved, and that Mike thinks that there are systems within the body that are too they're too...
You're too boring. You're too boring for me. You're way too boring. You stop it.